Welcome to the Catholic History channel, where we discuss important topics to Catholic history. Today, we will be talking about Pope Benedict XV. Pope Benedict XV, born Giacomo Paolo Giovanni Battista della Chiesa on November 22, 1854, in Genoa, Italy, was the 258th Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. He served from September 3, 1914, until his death on January 22, 1922. Prior to his papacy, Della Chiesa pursued a career in the Church, entering the Vatican Diplomatic Corps in 1882. He served in various roles, including as Apostolic Delegate to Spain and Secretary of the Congregation for Extraordinary Ecclesiastical Affairs. In 1907, Pope Pius X appointed him as Archbishop of Bologna, a position that he held until he was elected Pope. Benedict's papacy began in a very important time, in the midst of World War I, during which he became known for his humanitarian efforts and his commitment to peace. Throughout the war, he made several attempts to mediate peace between the warring parties, proposing a 7-point peace plan in 1917. Unfortunately, his efforts were unsuccessful, as both the Central Powers and the Allies disregarded his proposals. Nevertheless, he continued to advocate for peace and relief for those affected by the war, establishing the Vatican Information Office to aid in communication between prisoners of war and their families. But apart from his involvement in World War I, Pope Benedict also focused on internal church matters. He sought to depoliticize the Church and to counteract the influence of modernism, which was perceived as a threat to traditional Catholic teaching. In 1917, he released the Code of Canon Law, a comprehensive legal system for the Church, which streamlined and organized ecclesiastical laws. Additionally, he promoted missionary work and sought to improve relations with Eastern Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox churches, as well as with other religious communities. Pope Benedict's papacy was marked by significant challenges, both globally and within the Church. Despite his relatively short time as Pope, his commitment to peace, humanitarianism, and fostering unity within the Church left a lasting impact. When he died on January 22, 1922, after a brief illness, he left behind a legacy that continues to inspire the Catholic Church and its followers in their pursuit of peace and understanding among diverse religious communities. But what was Benedict's early life like? Again, born Giacomo Paolo Giovanni Battista della Chiesa on November 21, 1854, he was raised in a noble and devoutly Catholic Genoese family. His father, Marquis Giuseppe della Chiesa, was a lawyer and a former soldier, while his mother, Giovanna Migliorati, belonged to an Italian noble family. He was the third of 4 children, and he got his early education at home under the guidance of tutors before attending the prestigious Jesuit-run school Liceo Ginnasio Giuseppe Mazzini in Genoa. After completing his secondary education, he then entered the Pontifical Roman Seminary to study theology in 1873, and then he attended the prestigious Collegio Capranica, a seminary in Rome, and later studied at the Pontifical Gregorian University, where he earned a doctorate in canon and civil law in 1879. While he was still a student, Della Chiesa was noticed by the Vatican Secretary of State, Mariano Rampolla, who took an interest in his career. In 1882, Rampolla appointed him to the Vatican Diplomatic Corps, where he gained valuable experience working in different roles. He served in various positions, including as Apostolic Delegate to Spain and Secretary for the Congregation for Extraordinary Ecclesiastical Affairs. His early life was characterized by a strong foundation in Catholic education, dedication to the Church, and a quick rise through the ranks of the Vatican's diplomatic service. This background prepared him for the challenges he would later face in World War I. But what was the larger role of the Vatican during World War I? During it, under Pope Benedict's leadership, they sought to maintain a position of neutrality and serve as a mediator between the warring parties. The Pope aimed to bring about peace and provide humanitarian assistance to those suffering from the consequences of the conflict. Despite their neutral stance, the Vatican's influence was often limited, and the warring nations often disregarded the Pope's peace initiatives. Throughout the war, Pope Benedict made several diplomatic efforts to negotiate peace. He sent letters and communications to the leaders of the belligerent countries, urging them to seek a just and lasting peace. In August 1917, the Pope presented the 7-point peace plan, which called for disarmament, freedom of the seas, renunciation of war indemnities, and the establishment of an international organization to arbitrate disputes. Unfortunately, his proposals were not embraced by the warring parties, who believed that accepting the Pope's peace plan would signal weakness to their adversaries. In addition to peace advocacy, the Vatican also focused on providing humanitarian aid during the war. Pope Benedict established the Vatican Information Office to help prisoners of war and their families communicate with each other. This office processed hundreds of thousands of requests, providing critical assistance in a time of great suffering. Furthermore, they coordinated efforts to provide food, clothing, and medical supplies to war victims, working with Catholic organizations and other relief agencies. Despite its limited influence, the Vatican played a significant role as a moral and humanitarian authority during World War I. The Pope's persistent efforts to promote peace and provide relief to those affected by the war demonstrated their commitment to the well-being of all people, regardless of nationality or religion. Although those peace initiatives were largely unsuccessful at the time, they laid the groundwork for future papal diplomacy and the Church's continuing role in promoting peace and social justice on the global stage. Now, has the Vatican remained neutral generally in 20th century conflicts? Usually, yes, even though they've had the leadership of several different popes, each of whom was different than the other. A position of neutrality has allowed the Holy See to serve as a moral authority and to focus on humanitarian efforts, diplomacy, and peace initiatives without being seen as taking sides in the various wars and disputes. While the Vatican's neutrality has not always guaranteed success in conflict resolution, it has provided a platform for the Church to advocate for peace and promote dialogue among nations. In World War I, as previously mentioned, Pope Benedict sought to mediate peace between the warring parties and to provide humanitarian aid. Similarly, during World War II, Pope Pius XII maintained the Vatican's neutrality despite facing criticism for his perceived silence on the Holocaust. Pope Pius focused on behind-the-scenes diplomacy, attempting to save lives by offering refuge to those fleeing persecution and urging warring nations to spare religious and cultural sites from destruction. In the latter half of the 20th century, the Vatican continued its neutral stance in global conflicts. Pope John XXIII and Pope Paul VI advocated for peace during the Cold War and sought to promote dialogue between East and West. Pope John Paul II, a vocal critic of both communism and unbridled capitalism, played a significant role in supporting the solidarity movement of his native Poland, which contributed to the eventual collapse of communism in Eastern Europe. Throughout these conflicts, the Vatican's neutrality has allowed it to act as a moral and spiritual leader, focusing on diplomacy, humanitarian efforts, and the promotion of peace. While the Holy See's influence on conflict resolution has varied depending on the specific conflict and global political dynamics, its neutral stance has been a consistent aspect of the Vatican's approach to 20th century conflicts. Thank you for listening. If you liked this video, please subscribe for more videos on the Catholic channel for history.